According to Gallup, in the early 2000s, only 30% of U.S. citizens favored the legalization of cannabis. By 2016, the number favoring legalization had jumped to 60%. Recently, Seattle dispensary owner John Davis said medical marijuana pulls higher than apple pie. Why the change?
Knots closure, he's right on the nose.
No doubt a number of factors have contributed to the change in public sentiment. Increased awareness of drug cartel violence, increased consciousness of medical uses, failure of the war on drugs. What is the history of cannabis prohibition, and who was Mackenzie King? How exactly did we get here?
I want to know absolutely everything that's happened up to now.
Well, let's see. First, the earth cooled.
Maybe skip ahead a bit. In the 1600s, cannabis textiles were needed by all of Europe's naval powers for ropes and sails. In the New World, tracts of land were given to settlers who promised to grow cannabis for fiber. Canada's first cannabis crop was planted in 1606, and by the mid-1600s, Britain made cannabis farming mandatory in all of New England. In Canada, the French government pressured colonists to grow as much as possible. To encourage this, colonists were allowed to pay taxes with hemp stalks. The names of many towns and villages were derived from their cultivation of cannabis. Unfortunately for governments, colonists, well, they preferred to grow food they could eat instead of cannabis for taxes and textiles. In the early 1700s, Canada's beaver trade in New France collapsed.
Nice beaver.
Thank you. I just had it stuffed.
Let me help you with that.
Administrator Michel Bégon tried to revive the economy by growing more cannabis to export to France. The renewed emphasis on cannabis was unpopular with the Catholic Church, since priests earned their wages via tithes from farmers. Food crops could be tithed, cannabis could not. Britain took control of Canada from France in 1763. The Navy needed even more cannabis. Governor James Murray brought Germans and Russians over to settle and raise cannabis. In 1801, Napoleon soldiers discovered hashish during the invasion of Egypt. They took it back to Europe when they returned home. By 1822, the Parliament of Upper Canada was investing in hemp processing machinery. An 1823 law allowed duty-free importation of hemp mills from the U.S. Over the next 100 years, cannabis would be grown in every province from Nova Scotia to BC. By the late 1800s, steam-powered engines and the cotton gin reduced the importance of cannabis. In 1893, the Indian Hemp Drug Commission published an 8-volume study commissioned by the British government, which stated that moderate use of hemp drugs is practically attended by no evil results at all.
Well, who didn't see that coming?
Nevertheless, with opium use spreading, drug prohibition in Canada began with the Opium Act of 1908, which was introduced by then Deputy Minister of Labour Mackenzie King. 30 years later, King famously said, "It is what we prevent rather than what we do that counts most in government."